Yo, what up? How's it going? And welcome back for another video. Today's video we'll be doing a KHAZIX guide for Season 10. So this guide is designed for if you're just new to KHAZIX as a champion, newer to jungling, or you just want to optimize your current KHAZIX gameplay for Season 10, and you want to learn how to do that, then this video will give you all the information, all the tools to set you up for success in order to do that in Season 10. So with that out of the way, let's get right into the video. Alright, before you ever load into the game, first thing you have to get set up is your rune setup. So just looking at runes, there are two different rune setups you can go. You can go the more bursty style electric with the domination tree. You can do that. There are some type of builds and some type of playstyles that will go into building Conqueror and stuff like that, but I really don't think the new Conqueror is super great on KHAZIX unless you're going for that brawl style build and that's the way you want to play. It's a viable way to play KHAZIX, but on the channel we go for the burst builds. This is the more fun gameplay and the best that synergizes with the lethality items. And I think the lethality items in this season are pretty decent. And honestly, a lot of the lethality items feel like they're just built for KHAZIX. Like Duskblade, you can utilize that passive twice in a fight. So the burst combo, I like the burst combo better, but you can do the precision tree. We're not going to talk too much about that, but you just take the Conqueror tree, and then you'll take domination second is a viable strategy. We're not going to talk too much about that one. The one we are going to talk about is the domination tree setup and for the burst setup. So the best keystone on KHAZIX is going to be Electrocute. You can do some fun stuff with Dark Harvest if that's what you want to do, but when given the opportunity between Electrocute and Dark Harvest, just in the current meta, I almost always prefer Electrocute on most champions. Gives you that little bit extra ability to burst in the early game, and is a little bit more consistent than having Dark Harvest. A lot of times, Dark Harvest is consistent in a weird way, whereas it'll always give you the execute damage when you need it, right? And it can be really good, especially if you're going that E-Evolve KHAZIX, can be good. But the Electrocute is more consistent, that it'll always be there up front, and like a lot of times you do the upfront burst and somebody else finishes. That happens a lot of time. And sometimes you need that upfront burst to just burn somebody's flash. That can be effective in the early game. So I almost always prefer Electrocute, at least in the current state of how Electrocute and Dark Harvest are balanced. Okay, the rest of the tree, you want to take sudden impact. You really don't want to take any other thing in that line. The sudden impact will reactivate every time you go into stealth, and especially if you're going the R-Evolve build, which I do recommend, you're going to be able to get that 3 times in a fight, and then an additional one with your jump. So it'll always be up. You'll always get that additional lethality. On this next tree, you can take really whatever you want in this tree. In the jungle, the best things to take most of the time, especially on lethality champions, is going to be either eyeball collection or zombie ward if you're building that early sweeper and you're building a lot of pinks, which you usually should do when you're playing the jungle. The new Duskblade doesn't give you that passive where you delete wards, so zombie ward's not quite as good. So I probably recommend just taking eyeball collection, especially if you're at lower ELOs and lower MMRs, because people just don't ward as much anyway, so you'll get less opportunity to clear efficient wards. Okay, in the bottom line, we have Ravenous Hunter taken right here. In my opinion, Ravenous Hunter is probably the best because it gives you a little bit more options. So Ravenous Hunter gives you a little bit more options in that you can actually fight fighters, moving around your burst combo, and then actually be able to kind of sustain with some bruisers type champions. It makes you have the ability to sustain against them. It makes you a little bit more beefy in team fights. Makes you a little bit more tanky in team fights. But there are other viable options in this tree. You can take Ultimate Hunter. In the late game, your cooldown on your ultimate is already super small. It's about 36 seconds. And with the additional Ultimate Hunter, if you actually have Ultimate Hunter, if the fights go out a little bit long, which a lot of times they do, sometimes you can get two different ultimates in the same team fights. So that is a viable option. Relentless Hunter, obviously, you can always take Relentless Hunter on junglers. It's just pretty OP for getting around the map. And that kind of stuff, but it does make you not having the Ravenous Hunter does make you just a little bit more vulnerable if you don't do a lot of upfront bursts and you get poked out a little bit in fights. Then your healing's not quite as great in the fights. I almost always prefer taking Ravenous Hunter. If you don't take Ravenous Hunter, the other two options are okay, but Ravenous Hunter is the most recommended. Okay, secondary tree, you can take a bunch of different things. The one I have pulled up is the Inspiration tree, taking the free boots and the additional cooldown reduction. The Cosmic Insight at the end. So the big thing about taking the inspiration tree is just the free boots. So the free boots are pretty good because lethality items are already pretty cheap. It just helps you snowball a little bit earlier. And if you're wondering why you see a lot of, if you watch pro play or you look up like pro builds and stuff like that, you'll see the pro players, they'll take free boots all the times on junglers and AD carries for plenty of reasons. So the biggest reason is in the bottom lane, you end up fighting quite a bit, more than the solo lanes. There's a lot more kills. There's the dragon down there, so you end up being involved in a lot of kills or a lot of fights, sometimes pre-10. So that can give you an additional setup to get your boots, as well as AD carries just want to save as much gold as they can so they get the free boots. For the jungler, it's the same reason. Especially on lethality junglers and stuff like this, where your build's already pretty cheap, you can get these free boots pretty early in the game, especially if you're ganking quite a bit and you're involved in a lot of fights. You can get these boots, and if you're playing jungle at all, you're going to be involved in fights pre-10, and if you're snowballing, this is going to give you an additional snowballing. But if you're not snowballing, hey, we get free boots 10 to 12 minutes depending on what patch you're on, because that shit changes all the time. So you can take that, and then the Cosmic Insight is just the only other really good option in this tree. It gives you an additional 5% cooldown reduction, so that's fine. If you don't want to take the free boots and you still want to take this tree, you can take Perfect Time and you can take the Stopwatch. That gives you, a little bit cheaper buy for the GA if you want to build that earlier. But if you're going to go this tree, it's usually just best to build the boots. So there are other options that you can take for a secondary tree. You can take Precision and just get Coup de Grace and Triumph, so you do an additional damage when you're executing, and then you get a little bit health back. That's viable to go, that's fine. Or you can take Tenacity Runes. You know how much I love Tenacity Runes if you watched any of these videos before. You can take the Tenacity Runes in that setup if you want to, that's fine as well, if you're scared of getting locked up. And then also you can take the Sorcery Tree. You can take Sorcery Tree and take Nimbus Cloak and Celerity, or Nimbus Cloak and Transcendence to get your 40% cooldown reduction, because some of the builds won't give you 40% cooldown reduction. That is fine as well. But I'm just the biggest fan of this inspiration tree. But if you want to take either of those three and you just kind of find your playstyle and kind of change it between game and game, that's fine as well. And then your bottom runes, your stat runes, are always going to be the same on almost all junglers. Going to be that attack speed with the AD, adaptive damage secondary, and then your armor on the bottom. Again, you can take MR runes if there's 4 AP options on the enemy team. But most of the time, you're just going to take armor to help beef you up when you're clearing your jungle cramps early in the game. All right, now that we have the runes out of the way, let's look over at your build. Okay, first thing we're going to look at is your core build. So you're going to build warrior every single game. There's really no other option in the jungle for you to take. So don't take anything else. Don't do some weird Blood Razor type stuff. Just take warrior. I do prefer taking Blue Smite. It helps with your earlier game ganks and stuff like that, as well as your chase down in the late game. You lead with your W to get your burst combo off, which we'll show later in the video, and then you can lead with your, you stealth, jump, and W before you jump, and that'll slow them down, and then you can do an additional slow with your Blue Smite when you go into your next stealth, and they won't be able to go anywhere. Even if they flash, you'll be able to catch them. So Blue Smite is usually the go-to option for Kha'Zix. You can go Red Smite if you want to. There's a lot of bruisers on the enemy team, and you think you're going to be in elongated fights in a lot of 1v1s, or there's an enemy assassin, like let's say you're in the Kha'Zix Rengar matchup, then Red Smite is fine to make sure you win those matchups with your Red Smite. So that's fine as well. Usually prefer taking Blue Smite, helps you out in those team fights, helps you out and running down carries when their flashes are up and stuff like that. Makes it to where you can utilize your combo a little bit differently and efficiently. After that, we're going to be building Duskblade. Duskblade is going to be your second item every single game, obviously after your boots, unless you're going a different style build, unless you're going that Conqueror build, or you're a little bit behind, you kind of want to build for team fights. That's okay too. But this is going to be your best bet, third item or second item every single game. You can utilize the Duskblade passive twice in a fight if you have R evolve. If you have your R evolved, you can go stealth initially to get into the fight, get your Duskblade auto and Q, and then go invisible again, hit them, and then go invisible for the third time. If you actually get in that visibility the third time, you will have a Duskblade passive back up to use. So it's pretty nuts on Kha'Zix. It's crazy in those 1v1s, especially if you're pretty fed and you have multiple lethality items. People will die before they even see you. They'll see your little W come out, and they'll see you land on top of them, and then they'll just be gone, or 80% of their health is gone, and then you're invisible, and they're like, well, I don't even know which direction to flash. So The Dustblade is so broken on Kha'Zix, so that is going to be your second item every single game. So that's the core build right there. We'll talk about some solid items after this. Your boots, you can take armor boots or mercs. You can go acidity boots if you just really want that early cooldown reduction, but it's really not that important to get 40% cooldown reduction on Kha'Zix. If you have 30, you're doing fine, and you're going to get at least 30% with the lethality build. If you go the brawler style build, a lot of times you'll get 40% cooldown reduction, or you can with the lethality build get 40% cooldown reduction as well. But you don't need 40% cooldown reduction. So just taking armor or merc treads, depending on the game, if they have more than 2 CC if they have at least 2 hard CC champions, I always go mercs. Or you can go the armor boots. You can do some fun stuff with the Moby boots, but usually you build Moby boots really early in the game. In Kha'Zix, you need to just get those lethality items in the first place to be able to actually kill people. So I don't normally build the Mobies, but you can do some fun stuff if you're crazy snowballing and do some fun things with that. All right, let's talk about some solid items and situational items. So here are the solid items. I, for whatever reason, forgot to put Maw on here, but Maw is a solid item to build. So usually your third item is going to be Edge of Night. So Edge of Night is so good now. The new passive Edge of Night, if you don't know, it passively grants you the spell shield like Abyssal rather than having to use it. It was such a pain to use the Edge of Nights and how inconsistent it felt. But now with it changed, it is actually so good on Assassins. It makes it to where you don't get instantly CC'd in fights if you kind of misposition or mismanage your cooldowns. It gives you kind of a get out card. And so I love Edge of Night. It has great stats on it as well. Edge of Night, I love third item, but you can just go Ghostblade if you want to just maneuver around the map a little bit quicker. That's also great for that. So Ghostblade or Edge of Night are both fine third item. Okay, after that we have Sanguine Blade. This may get nerfed by the time you watch this video because this item is pretty insane. If you find yourself 1v1ing, so if you find yourself in that side lane in the 1v1 matchup quite a bit, then Sanguine Blade makes you win every single 1v1. So this is a very good option that you can build third or fourth item as well if you find yourself in 1v1 situations quite a bit. GA is great on all assassins, especially if you find your team is balling up and you're having to do a lot of team fights. GA can, every time it's up, can make your team fighting ability almost twofold as strong because you can actually just suicide in the enemy team and trade lives with somebody and then jump out, especially if you have your E evolve. And they're going to waste so much time focusing you. So Guardian Angel, fourth or fifth item, is great. Black Cleaver is a fine item to build after your Dustblade or before your Dustblade if you're going to brawl style build. But if you build it after your Dustblade, it gives you 40% cooldown reduction. If there's a lot of tanks in the game, a lot of bruisers, this is a very good option to go third or fourth item. It's fine as well. Or you can just full build with Black Cleaver. This is more for the brawl style build, and you want to go the brawl style build if there's a lot of bruisers and tanks on the enemy team. And then obviously we have the Maw Memorius. I didn't have this on here, but you can take Maw as an additional item if there's a lot of AP threats on the enemy team. Those are all fine as well. But the key thing with Kha'Zix, if you're playing the Assassin style build, you want to get your lethality early, get your 2 or 3 lethality items, and then get your GA so you can team fight a little bit stronger. So some situational items. We have the Death Dance. We have Death Dance and Sterek, so this is more for the brawl style build. If you're going that precision tree brawl style build, Death Dance can be a very great item. Don't be stuck on like, oh man, I'm gonna build a second item and I'll be so beefy, it'll be so much to stand. Please don't do it. It's not that great second item. It's important thing to look at is how expensive it is. It is 3,500 gold, so you do need that Dustblade second item if you're going the Assassin build. And if you want to fit in your Death Dance somewhere because you just really like Death Dance, a lot of people love this item. It's pretty OP. If you want to fit that into your build somewhere, do it third or fourth item, third or fourth item is usually where it's at, or you can full build with it is okay as well. Gives you extra sustain, makes you a little bit more beefier. And then we have Sterek's. You can build Sterek's last item if you want to. This is the last item on a lot of assassins, a lot of melee assassins for me. If you want to build this last item, that's fine. If you find yourself team fighting a lot, you build it after your GA, then you can be a little bit more effective in team fights. It is a fine item to go last item, but usually I stick this out of my build. Okay. And now we have the example final build. So this is just the lethality build. If you want to go the more brawl style build, you can build, you can get a Dustblade, Dustblade, Black Cleaver, Sterek's, Death Dance, that type of build. We'll give you that more brawl style build. It's okay, but this is the Assassin build. So we have Merc Treads, but you can just change it for whatever you want. But I love Merc Treads, Blue Smite Warrior, Dustblade, Edge of Night, GA, and then our Ghostblade. The way I have this build set up, it's last item Ghost Blade, but again, you can just kind of put these items in whatever order you want, but you want your Dust Blade to be your second item after your Warrior enchantment is what you want it to be. Edge of Night and Ghost Blade, you can kind of switch them around. I'm a huge fan of a new Edge of Night, so that's why we have it right there. All right, now with the build out of the way, let's actually talk about Kha'Zix's abilities. So Kha'zix, his whole passive is around isolating enemies. So when an enemy is isolated, your Q will do an additional damage, and if you have it evolved, it will do it'll give you additional cooldown reduction as well. So what your Q is Kha'zix hits his claws in front of him. It's a slight auto reset, so you can auto and Q, but it's not a super clean auto reset like something like Camille. But you can auto and Q and get a good little burst combo right there, just with the one ability. It's your highest damaging ability. It's what's going to get most of your kills. And a lot of times you want to play around your stealth when your Q is back up. So you go into stealth, auto Q them, and then go out of stealth, and then Q them again. But we'll show those combos at the end of the video. That's going to be your biggest damaging ability. Does additional damage to isolated units, and you'll be able to see the indicator whenever you play him. And if you evolve it, it'll give you additional cooldown reduction and additional range on your auto attacks. The Q evolve, so this is going to be weird me talking about these abilities a little bit. He has a lot of unique interactions, right? The Q evolve gives you additional range and makes it to where your Q resets a little bit faster on isolated targets. It also gives your Q additional range. I almost never go the Q evolve. The only times I'll ever go Q evolve is if I'm farming quite a bit. So if you're farming quite a bit, or if you hit level 6 and you're about to do the dragon, then you can go Q evolve and you'll clear the dragon a lot faster. So you clear neutrals and jungle camps a lot quicker, and then it's back up a little bit faster in fights if you're fighting like bruiser type champions. But I really don't like going the Q evolve. If you do go Q evolve, you usually go at first or second, but I'm really not a big fan of Q evolve. All right, next we have W. So the W, you shoot a projectile in front of you. So it's a projectile that goes in front of you. If it hits an enemy and you're close to the explosion range and it explodes, it can do small splash damage. If you're near the explosion range, then it will also heal you. So it is a good ability when you're doing AoE camps. You'll use your W, it'll heal you up on the AoE camps. Also, you can use your W on enemies, for obviously. The big thing with W is if you get the evolve. So the evolve for W is instead of it shooting a single projectile, it shoots 3 projectiles in a cone, and those will heal you as well. And now what it'll do, it'll give you a huge slow, up to 90% slow. So it'll give you a 90% slow on the enemy, and they cannot get away. So and the way I'll show you the combos at the end of the video, you can use it at the front, and they will not be able to get away from your jump and the movement speed that you'll get in your R. So I always go W evolve second. It's pretty weird to go first. If you go at first, it makes it pretty difficult to actually fight people, and you'll get like the feeling that like, W first will be OP. I'll be so they'll be so slow, they won't be able to get away from me. But not having R or Q evolve makes it to where your actual combo does way less damage, and you don't have a whole lot more options. You just have the single, I'm going to slow you and run at you type of style. So I always go W evolve second, and if you're going to go W evolve, I recommend taking it second. All right, and now we have E. So the E is a jump, so it's a pretty short jump that can get over most of the walls on the game. So it's just a jump. It's pretty straightforward. It does a little bit of damage when you land, but this will be how you close the gap a lot of times in fights. But something that's important is if you're able to get on people without your E, you want to utilize it either to get away or follow their flash. It's about the same range as flash is what your E is. It does a little bit of damage. When you E evolve, it increases the range quite a bit. So it increases the range quite a bit, and then it'll reset, kind of like Tristana's jump. So whenever you get takedowns, you can actually reset. So I usually take this. You can take this second if you don't want to take W, if you're just hard snowballing. But usually you take this at level 16. You take this with your last upgrade. You'll take your E to give you those resets in fights, kind of make your team fights a little bit better and the ability to close the gap. You can take it second rather than your W, but that's usually only if you're hard snowballing. You want to take your E or E evolve second. All right, and now we're going to be talking about your ultimate. So your ultimate is the passive on the ultimate is what gives you evolve. So every time you get your ultimate at level 6, 11, and 16, you'll get to evolve your abilities. Okay, so what does your R actually do as an active? So your R gives you stealth and some movement speed, and also unit collision. It ignores unit collision. So when you're in your R, you can walk through minions. So the first time whenever you use it, And even when it's level 16, if you haven't evolved it, it's about 1.25 seconds. You'll go invisible and you get a burst of movement speed. Now, if you have R evolved, and there's 2 activations of it. If you have R evolved, you get 3 activations and you're invisible for 2 seconds. I love R evolve. I'm an R evolve KHAZIX player. True and true. I take R evolve first every game, and I never take Q evolve. So the R evolve just gives you so much more options. You can wait out your cooldowns to actually, you do your initial burst combo, and then you can get an additional burst combo. And if you utilize it correctly, you can actually get a second Duskblade proc. If that fight takes long enough, you can get an additional Duskblade proc on your third R. So it's pretty OP as the first R evolve. Use it on your ultimate. It gives you additional stealth. And additional stealth use, and your stealth use is longer. So in synopsis, you'll take your you're gonna max your Q, you'll max your W second, obviously take your ult whenever it comes up, you max your E last. I'm a big fan of taking R evolve first, W evolve second, and then E evolve to get your resets and jumps. Alternatively, you can take R evolve first, E second if you're hard snowballing, and then W last, but I don't recommend that 99% of the time. But if you're crazy snowballing, you want to have some fun, you can take your E, and that can be quite useful as well. If you don't want to go the R evolve style, you'll take your Q first, W second, and then you can decide whether you want your R or E last. But I'm not a huge fan of that build. All right, now let's talk about how to clear the jungle with KHAZIX in Season 10. So if you played KHAZIX in Season 9, you'd find that your clear paths were pretty XD. You just had to do the standard clear your entire red side jungle, and when you got done doing that, it would take forever, and if the enemy had a ganking jungler, they would already have something done on the map. It would take forever, and you'd be low health, and so your ability to actually fight over the scuttle crab is nil. So you don't have to do that clear anymore, but you can do that clear. You can go talisman and do that clear, and that's fine as well, especially if you just want to be on that side of the map to either avoid the enemy jungler or be on the same side as the enemy jungler. That clear is fine as well, but I was never a huge fan of that clear on KHAZIX, but it was kind of just all you had to do in Season 9. So in Season 10, you can do whatever clear you want, and you can start either talisman or machete. It's important to know what jungle item you want to start for what clear you're going to do. If you want to do your standard red side clear, that's fine. Make sure you take talisman level 1. Clear that side of the jungle. After you're done clearing that, you can decide if you want to stay on that side of the jungle and do your scuttle crab, or you can just move over and power farm and full clear your entire jungle. It is okay to do as well. You can just kind of play it by ear. But the other jungle clear that you can do, cool thing about Season 10 is you can do a lot of different jungle clears. The other clear you can do, start machete. I'm a big fan of this clear on KHAZIX. And you can do, if you're starting on a red buff, you do your red, you go all the way over to your blue buff, blue gromp, and then you can gank that side of the map. So you can gank either bot or top, whichever side of the map you end up on, and then do your scuttle crab after the gank. That's a pretty quick clear to get a quick level 3 and to be able to fight the enemy with double buff and get on the side to gank. And you just want to utilize which camp you're going to start by which side of the map you want to end up on to do that scuttle crab or to do that gank, either bot side or top side, right? Alternatively, you can just do the blue buff, gromp, and then red, and then you'll be on the other side of the map, quick level 3, and you'll just do it that direction if that's the side of the map you want to end up on, or just do it reverse if you want to end up on the other side of the map, right? You can also just do full clear, or not full clear. If you're starting machete, it's a little bit harder to do full clear as it's not as healthy to do the raptors. So you can do blue, gromp, wolves, red buff. It'll make your level 3 the same speed, except for that you won't have double buffs whenever you get it, so you'll be ganking a little bit later, and whenever you do this clear, by the time you get done with your red buff, the scuttle crab will be spawning on that side of the map, so you can go over to fight for that, so you can't get a gank in before you do the scuttle crab. It'll be scuttle then gank if you want to gank after that. So that's a drawback of doing that type of clear, but the better part of that clear is after you do that scuttle crab or gank, you can just recall and then go back bottom side, and you'll have respawning camps on your respawning camps on your blue side of the jungle, and that can give you a quicker level 4 to just re-clear those after they've already leveled up. That can be that, and then you'll have your talisman to go clear your top side. So the drawback of taking machete is that you can't really full clear. It's kind of difficult to do the raptors without having a talisman on your first clear. So that's the drawback of taking it. But you can actually get a pretty quick level 4 without full clearing, because you can just, after you clear if you're clearing your blue side, then you take your red buff, get the Scuttle Crab gank, you can reset and then get a quick level 4 off of those camps if you didn't already get the level 4 off of doing your gank top side. All right, we already did the skill orders, so let's talk about how to play your fights in the mid to late game. So let's talk about that. So playing fights with KHAZIX is pretty standard assassin gameplay. So you can either pick people off in the side lanes, utilizing your stealth, and I'm going to show combos at the end of the video, so stay tuned till the end of the video and I'll show you all the combos. The combos are kind of weird with KHAZIX. They're highly situational the way you want to use your combos. So the big thing with KHAZIX is picking people off in the side lane, so pretty standard assassin play. You want to be sweeping a lot of brushes in the late game, so you want to make sure you have a lot of pink wards, and you have your sweeper and all that good stuff. And if you want to buy the other lethality item that gives you the ward clearing, I don't really recommend it, as I think it's really just a support item. I really think it's only good on, it's so cheap and the stats are kind of whatever. It's so good on a Pike and Senna, but other than that, I don't really recommend building it on actual assassins. But if you want to build that, then that's okay. But it's very important to be clearing out vision, and if you want to just play around side lanes, if you're not used to playing assassins, you'll get used to this and understanding this when people go to collect side waves. So a lot of times you'll see AD carries go collect side waves, and you can be in the, if you understand that and you understand when that's going to happen, and when you see people missing on the map and kind of predict where they're going to appear, you'll get used to that as you play more assassins. Then you'll be able to just completely shut down enemy carries in the late game because they'll greed out for waves on the side lane, especially anything below diamond. AD carries, people who play AD carries, a lot of times have no idea how to play around assassins, and will just go to side lanes when there's no reason they should ever be in a side lane. They'll do that all the time. Anything below diamond, that'll happen all the time. It's pretty insane how often that happens. People will have no idea, and it'll be easy to pick people on the side lane. So I'll show you some combos with that at the end of the video. But that's pretty standard assassin gameplay. And playing in team fights, pretty standard assassin gameplay as well, is you never want to be the primary engage unless someone mispositions. If someone mispositions and you have that RWE evolve set up, then you can actually get into a backline even when they're kind of close to their team, insta-burst them and get out, especially if you're far ahead, you can do that. But really, as KHAZIX and any other type of assassin, you usually don't want to be initiating fights unless someone mispositions and you're able to kill them and get out, then that's fine. Or you have your GA. Sometimes you can initiate fights by assassinating somebody and suiciding and then get out after your GA clears, or your team collapses in the enemy team once your GA resets. That's okay. But most of the time, you're going to be a secondary engage type of champion. Not really like engage like how Nocturne engages, but you want the team to already be fighting and for them to burn cooldowns before you go in and fight. If you're not used to playing assassins, that is just going to be something you have to get used to. So playing KHAZIX in the late game is pretty standard assassin gameplay. You'll be picking people off in the side lanes, and then you want to be patient in fights and go in after the big cooldowns are gone, or assassinate people who misposition, and you can do some really big stuff. KHAZIX is a great late game champion. His R evolves and his scaling on his items is pretty insane. If somebody doesn't have a support hugging them all the time, it's actually very hard for people to escape KHAZIX's one-shot ability. I was talking about some counters in the early game. So jungle's always a weird position because you think like counters. There are some like standard counters in the jungle, like for example, Elise counters Lee Sin. That's a pretty standard combo. Lee Sin can win that, but the way your spiders interact, you can block abilities, block his highest damage ability with your spiders and stuff like that. So that's an example of like a hard jungle counter, but a lot of other matchups really don't have hard jungle counters. KHAZIX is really great against people who sustain for a long time. So for example, if you're fighting like a Hecarim in the early game, it is actually pretty difficult to play like Hecarim versus KHAZIX. So KHAZIX, a lot of times you're going to be able to 1v1 a lot of those champions. Sometime after you have your R evolve, even the fights that feel kind of weird, like let's say you're fighting a Jax, that can feel kind of scary at first, but once you have your R evolve, you can actually just wait out a lot of their abilities and kill them. And you can burst out even champions who dominate other champions in the early game. So for example, like a champion like Olaf, if you do your burst combo after level 6, you can actually just outright kill them before their sustain ever even matters. So as far as like counter matchups, KHAZIX does feel pretty slow in the early game. So again, even though he can gank in the early game and his ganks are fine, they're not quite as good as like a champion like Xin Zhao or Rammus or Hecarim. So sometimes if if the enemy jungler has a super early game heavy jungler and they're actually getting plays and avoiding you in the 1v1, that can feel really bad. But just know once you get 6, you can make a lot more plays. You can be a really gank heavy jungler at 6. Just know that you're going to catch back up. But sometimes those matchups will feel kind of bad whenever you're doing that. Additionally, KHAZIX just doesn't do very well in 1v1s against tanks. So for someone like Rammus, if you don't really want to 1v1 them very often, as soon as Rammus has anything, he's going to 1v1 you all the time, especially as soon as he hits 2 items. You'll never, ever, ever be able to fight him unless you go that brawler style build and you're way far ahead. But even if you're super far ahead, if you have the assassin build, Rammus will one-shot you. It's actually pretty hilarious. He'll one-out you in his taunt duration. So I would avoid fighting champions like Rammus. In the early game, it can feel kind of tough if the enemy team has some really heavy early game junglers and they're avoiding you effectively, and so you're never getting the 1v1 them. Anything like that can feel kind of tough in the early game. All right, here we are in game. We're going to be doing a couple combos. So KHAZIX's kind of a weird champion because depending on what evolves you took and then how the game's actually kind of playing out, or depending on the situation, highly dependent on the situation, you'll do your combo pretty differently. So first thing I'm going to show you is just the full burst combo. So you'll start with your ultimate. You'll start with your ultimate because you're going to assassinate your enemy. So let's say I just have someone in the river right here. I'm sitting in this bush. This is the full burst combo, maximum DPS. So you'll come out of stealth. So it'll look like this. You'll W jump, Q, and then go back into stealth and get your other Duskblade proc. That's a full burst combo. So again, I'll say it again. You'll R first to get your invisibility and to get close enough to your enemy. You'll cast your W to break your stealth, and then immediately cast your E. The closer you are to the enemy champion, the quicker your E cast will go off. So if you can get right on top of them, and this is the full burst combo. You don't need to E here. You can save your E if you think they might flash, and then you can just follow up with your E. But closing the gap with your E, if they have flash, a lot of times you won't be able to kill them. But if you have R evolve, you can usually still chase them down. So the full burst combo again, you'll stealth, break stealth with your W. You want to get as close as you can before you break stealth. You break stealth with your W, and then E, and then Q is the full burst combo. So it looks like this. And then you'll stealth again, get your Duskblade proc, and then your Q will be back up as well. If you had Q evolve, it would have been up a little bit faster, and you could have broke stealth a little bit quicker. So here's the combo if you don't want to use your E for the burst, then you'll just do it like this. Pretty simple. You'll just R, get as close as you can, WQ, R again, and let's say they flashed away, and then I'll jump, and then I have another R back up if you did R evolve. These are the evolves I take anyway. So that's the full burst combo if you're just catching someone in the side lane or catching someone in the river. Looks something like that. Okay, now playing team fights as KHAZIX. We would have talked about it earlier in the video, but let's just show kind of how you would interact in a team fight. I'm going to have my cooldowns auto-refreshed right here, just so I get my E cooldown as if I had an E evolve, so that's why I have this enabled on the side right here, but I'll still use my other abilities kind of how they would be. So we can do our burst combo to start it out, so it can look something like this. So I'm trying to assassinate this enemy. My team's already engaged in a fight with these two enemies right here, and so remember, like we talked earlier, you don't want to primary engage unless somebody's out of position, but team's already engaged over here and I'm going in for assassination, or they're just mispositioned and I'm going in for assassination. So you use your R stealth and your Ghost Blade at the same time and get as close as you can before you want to break the distance with your burst combo. So it looks something like this. Go stealth again. Maybe you kill them, you get your reset, and then you can have another stealth to exit the fight. Or it can look like something like this if it took a little bit too long. Let's actually get the full burst combo. Then you can stick around with your, and you want to utilize your R's, so it'll look something like this. I stealth again, they're not quite dead. And now I killed them, and now I stealth and walk away. Boom, there we go. So you want to utilize your stealth timing. So you don't want to break, especially if you're in a team fight and they start to focus you. You want to wait out your stealth and don't break it until your Q cooldown is back up. Or you just want to waste your enemy's time. You don't want to just sit here and brawl them. You don't want to do this. You don't just want to walk up to them and just, I'm going to fight you. I'm going to fight you. Actually utilize your ultimate unless they're just right by themselves and you can just full burst them by auto attacking them. But you want to utilize the stealth you get. It'll refresh your Duskblade. And then also it'll enable you to kind of dodge out some skill shots and can maybe bait some people into holding things on and not necessarily expect your burst. Okay, another way you can do this combo is not lead with your W. As you saw before, it's like slightly clunky the way I'm doing it, and that's the only way to do it, where you W and then E. It's like a little clunky, but the W will travel while you're in air. It does feel a little bit clunky, especially if you don't get close enough. So if I'm trying to hit this target and I W from there, it's pretty slow. And from breaking stealth, sometimes that'll be the difference for you getting CC'd. So you can see how slow this looks. But that's a full burst combo. If you don't want to do the full burst combo, you can do it a little bit different. I gotta wait for my R to be back up. You can just lead. You can just lead with your jump, Q, and then W right before you go into your second stealth. And they'll be slow during your stealth. The benefit to that is they're slow during your stealth, and then breaking out of your initial stealth will be a little bit less clunky. But I like doing the full burst combo, but this combo is fine as well. So it looks something like this. Use your W at the end before you go into stealth. So you'll stealth, jump. So you'll stealth, jump, Q, or auto Q, W, and then stealth. So it looks something like this. I messed up my stealth there, but you get the idea. I actually accidentally did an additional auto attack. That's why I broke stealth. So let me show you again. And my Duskblade is back up for the final stealth. Boom. Yeah, so playing out team fights, we talked about it earlier in the video. It's, as I said, depending on the situation, you'll use different combos. Like you can use the full burst combo, or you can go in like I just showed you with that combo where you just jump on top of the isolated enemy, you use your Q, and then you W before you go into stealth, and you refresh yourself. The big thing when you're fighting in team fights is utilize your stealth timing, or you're going to have a really bad time. Alright guys, this is going to be the end of the video. I had a blast making this one. KHAZIX is one of my favorite champions. All the guides I've made so far are honestly my favorite champions, or my favorite jungle champions to play. I'll make some other role guides, but I'm just going to focus on jungle for now, get a good portfolio set up. So if any of you guys are watching this and you play other roles, like you play support and stuff like that, I'll be having support guides coming out pretty soon, as that is honestly, my favorite role is top lane. But I think jungle is the most fun to talk about. Jungle is definitely my favorite role to talk about and discuss and teach people. I think jungle has the most nuanced support with the next nuance, but top lane is a man's role. You know what I'm saying? Anyways, hey guys, thank you so much for watching. The response I've been getting from all these videos have been so great, and I really appreciate all of you coming by and watching, and those of you who subscribed. It's just amazing. I've been working on this for years, getting this going, and it's pretty exciting to see it actually happening. So anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Bye-bye! Bye! Bye!